Chic, festive, and delicious, the seafood platter is a must for your end-of-year festivities. With its procession of oysters, shellfish, and crustaceans, all resting on a bed of seaweed or crushed ice, this salty pyramid is always a gastronomic adventure. Our first taste is here, in France's Arcachon Bay, where the terraces of charming seafront restaurants are packed at the end of this summer day.
I just sent you two cooked royal on the same platter, upstairs. Ladies and gentlemen, here is your seafood platter. It's just the beginning, it's not over. I wish you a bon appetit. Enjoy yourself.
So are they milky in months without an R?
No, it's August and they are not milky.
They're not milky in winter?
And mussels have a season too.
Ah.
Ladies and gentlemen, is it all right?
Perfect, delicious.
Do you want explanations on the origin of the products?
Yes, with pleasure.
The lobster, the best, of course, of the Breton lobsters. This name has changed to European lobsters. This is called blue lobster. The European lobster is fished on the coasts of Brittany, Scotland, and Ireland. This is the best time for lobsters. The langoustines, Scotland. Shrimp, Mauritania. The whelks come from Normandy. Oysters, we're serving you oysters from right here, the Baie d'Arcachon. We're in Arcachon, so we honor the local products. The periwinkles are also from Brittany, and the clams come from Arcachon as well. I sell the seafood platter for $48, and it can go up to $65 with a half a lobster on it. It's expensive. But in Paris, you'll have to add 30% for the same thing. It's not a product where we add a very big profit margin. But $48 is a sum when you have wine, dessert. It's a nice average ticket.
48 euros per person. But what exactly do you find on a seafood platter? Cooked, frozen, raw, organic, farmed, or wild? Where do all these products come from? And are they all truly of high quality? The seafood platter is above all a balanced presentation of crustaceans and shellfish, with the featured item in the place of honor in the center, crab, lobster, or spiny lobster. The base is always the same. It is composed of oysters, but be very careful not to impose Charentes Marennes oysters on someone who loves Normandy oysters. Customers have become connoisseurs and navigate between oysters like seasoned seafarers. Yet there is one oyster that is gaining popularity, the Gilardo Special. The Gilardo name has become a brand based at the foot of the bridge to the island of Oléron. Their company operates in great secrecy. Access to the site is for employees only. Bruno Gauvin receives us for a very rare authorized visit. In 2008, he won the honor of France's best fishmonger after he joined the company and became its spokesperson.
It's a brand, and some people even think it's an oyster species. But we'll stay modest. We recognize a Gilardo oyster by how meaty it is. And it's not a filtered oyster, it's from the open sea. The special Gilardo, which is very fleshy, will give you a more buttery taste. It will have depth. We go for flavors of hazelnut, almonds in the finish. Then we have the adductor muscle here, a big adductor muscle. This is very important because it gives the sweet taste to the oyster. It's important when you taste it to scrape the base of this muscle and not leave anything attached. Then you will have all the flavors. Once again, what's great about this oyster is how meaty it is. Here we see not milk, but glycogen. It's a reserve of sugar to face the winter and to ensure its growth. It cannot be milky because it is a sterile oyster. Oysters that don't breed in the summer, so there is no milk. We have here a hatchery triploid oyster, so it's just not possible.
Triploid hatchery oysters, oysters born and bred in a laboratory, genetically manipulated to make them sterile. An invention of Ifremer, the French Research Institute for the Exploitation of the Sea. By crossing diploid oysters from the natural environment to tetraploid laboratory oysters that contain 4 pairs of chromosomes, researchers obtained triploids with 3 pairs of chromosomes. These sterile oysters grow faster because they don't waste energy producing gametes, eggs, and sperm. The triploid babies are placed in a breeding park in France, Croatia, or Portugal, but most often they grow in Ireland, where they form and obtain their unique nutty flavor.
They have 4-generation oyster farming know-how in their family, so they've had time to develop breeding techniques. We have a customer waiting list. There are quite a lot of secrets in this farming process. And of course, there is the laser marking that we don't like to show too much.
You don't like to show much, in fact.
We like being discreet. The more discreet we are, the better.
This discretion didn't prevent a worldwide first. In 2010, fake Gilardo oysters were reported in China, Europe, and then all over the world. Ordinary oysters sold at the price of Gilardo special oysters for nearly 10 euros apiece. For this family business, it's unacceptable, so they invest nearly 5 million euros in a technique of laser engraving onto their oyster shells and patent the process. This system is integrated in the packaging lines, but again, it's impossible for us to film it.
I'm not sure your camera sees this, the G here. Each oyster that is sorted here on the lines goes into a machine to be engraved and comes out to be packed and then finally shipped.
Gilardo is not your typical oyster company. They're so confident in their quality criteria that they refused the prized Marin d'Oléron IGP label and the coveted red label. The strategy proved to be profitable because Gilardo is now buying its one and only wholesaler here in Rungis, the largest fresh produce market in the world.
Bruno, we get Gilardos here?
It's here at Blanc Company.
It's the only place in Paris?
Yes, in the Paris region, fishmongers can buy Gilardos here.
Do you know how many oysters are sold here?
A lot. A lot.
Do you know the numbers?
A lot.
We won't learn any more. With 150,000 tons of products per year, the fish pavilion in Rungis is the largest port in France. It is reserved for early risers or night owls. Here you negotiate for your shellfish and bargain the price of your crustaceans.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Bruno Gauvin is like a fish in water here.
How much are you selling them for?
This one?
39. That's wholesale.
But times are hard, even in Rungis. The internet has changed the rules of the game. Professionals are acquiring more and more produce directly from the docks without necessarily seeing what they're buying. Stéphane is one of these fishmongers. Every morning he connects to 20 fishing ports, from Saint-Jean-de-Luz to Boulogne-sur-Mer, and nothing escapes his seasoned eye.
Here we go. Every morning I turn on the computer at 4:30 a.m. or 5, and I start buying from markets on the coast. Every day, prices move up or down. During the morning or over 2 days, it can go up 50, 60, or 80%.
A peculiarity of this profession that works with live products from the wild.
Meaning that in the morning you can already make a lot of money or lose a lot of money? Yes, in the morning, depending on the conditions. It'll determine the mood for the day. Ah, there's the lobster.
Breton lobster. Stéphane is impatient to know its price.
It's complicated to buy lobsters in this season. There's a small volume. In August, the lobster is in high season and much cheaper. The lobster's price now will go up 50 or 60%. We'll pay, I think, 50 euros per kilo.
3 times a week, Stéphane buys lobsters to garnish his seafood platters. This is the composition that sells best.
We put a whole assortment of shellfish on the trays, like cockles, Spanish mussels, or clams.
So what do you put on there per person?
For a platter like this, 6 oysters per person, 2 Spanish mussels, 2 cockles, 2 clams, and a portion of periwinkles, and small gray shrimps, some whelks. We put 5 shrimps and 3 langoustines per person. And then, depending on the customer's request, we put either a crab, a half crab, a lobster, or a spiny lobster. The most common order is a lobster, or a half lobster.
There are 2 varieties of lobster, the Canadian, which is green-brown and much less flavorful than the European blue lobster. Once cooked, though, all lobsters become red. In the wild, 1 lobster in 3 million is bright blue, a genetic mutation that makes this creature unique. There are 2 molecules that, when mixed, give the lobster its blue color. These blues are the most popular, the most expensive, and the most rare.
This one, you see this? Its color, it's beautiful. When they are blue like this, light blue, then you know it's full. It's a very good period for lobster.
We wanted to learn more about this luxury crustacean. We traveled to Normandy, where William navigates in his fishing cutter, the Iris de Suze. His fishing ground is between the Chausey Islands and the Manquies Archipelago, a very hazardous rocky zone.
You can see the current on the buoy. You have the impression it's moving forward. We're really close to the rocks. Hold on, I need to concentrate. That one's there, that one's there. Don't hit the rocks.
Navigating is very delicate in this maze of rocks.
I'm always here during the same tide. If you come when the sea is high, you don't see a thing because everything is covered at high tide. Nothing. There's nothing, nothing. We'll see some baskets with lobsters in them, but you get some lobsters, but they're too small. Here, you see this one? We measure from the eye to the head, the cephalothorax. When it's too small, it arrives here. It's almost a ½ inch below the minimum. Often they look okay, and you think you've done well. And once you start checking, you think, hey, we got nothing. And like that, we toss it back close to its hole, its home. And then it goes back to mom and dad. Yes. Here's a male with big claws. Hey, there's 2 of them.
William's catch today is more than 50 lobsters. Half will be sold in the region's fish markets, the rest auctioned at the Granville Fish Market.
The auction market is very simple, super simple. You come back, deliver your catch, the next day everything is sold. The Granville auction is starting to be well known for fresh lobster because every day there is a lobster catch which hasn't been in tanks. They stay 2 months in a tank without losing weight. Their stomach gets used to fasting.
Because what we are not always aware of is that the lobster we eat at Christmas may have spent the last 4 months in a seawater tank. Eyemouth in the north of Scotland. Stéphane has come here from Arcachon to make his Christmas purchases.
Stéphane, Bonjour. How are you? Okay? Good man. I take you through and we have a look at some products? Okay. Good man. Okay.
Behind these doors, Stéphane discovers a massive lobster residence with hundreds of crustaceans on dozens of levels.
We can keep them in the waters for up to 3 months, 4 months, depending on the market demands and the time of year. Obviously, for the Christmas period, we have a full stock of lobsters to catch the Christmas market.
I'm amazed how they keep the lobsters alive. They put them in small individual compartments, and I'm surprised they don't escape and they stay like that in the water. I'm very surprised. Now I understand why they have so many beautiful products for Christmas. It'll be a good holiday this year, I think.
Okay.
That's what we'll take for quality and size. It's what we need for Christmas. The important thing is to know how it is caught, that it wasn't frozen, that it comes to us alive and clean like this, with beautiful antennae, that the lobster is not damaged, that it hasn't suffered. This is important, especially for the clientele.
In the middle of the night, the fishing boats arrive one by one at the port of Eyemouth. Paul's catches langoustine or Norway lobster, another crustacean that's very popular on seafood platters. Maybe even more so than lobster because it's much harder to keep alive. Norway lobster is Stéphane's favorite, and it's the star of his platters.
There's the small, medium, and large, all alive, only alive. The big ones like this are very complicated to get, especially before the holidays. When we're here and we see this quality of product, it's really, really great. It's tops.
Yeah, we'll process them tomorrow, and they will be in the French wholesaler supermarkets on Saturday morning. This animal here will be maybe 6 pieces to the kilo. So as you can see, it's there's a lot of life in this one. It's quite strong, hard-shelled, so beautiful animal. These will be selling at the minute for around 28 euros.
And at Christmas time?
They could be as high as 50 to 60. It's a big difference. And then in France, they will be even more expensive. We put them into these to protect them because they're big prawns, they're high value, and the customer wants a whole prawn in good condition with no bite marks from the claws. So we have to protect them in the boxes, and they're very valuable.
A major part of the catch will be delivered to the United States and China. The rest goes to the Rungis wholesale market, where it arrives very much alive. We meet Bruno Gauvin, our famous fishmonger, at the seafood pavilion in Rungis. These refrigerated cases from around the world hold no secrets for him.
Come and see. This is amazing. Precise work. I don't like to touch them much. Look, they're wonderful. No matter the size, live cooked langoustine on a platter is extraordinary. They're firm, nothing like frozen langoustine.
But it's hard to conserve and to bring here alive?
The fishmonger can keep them alive for a day or two, but no more.
You mustn't waste time.
There's no time to waste. You gotta sell them.
The Norway lobster is certainly a favorite on seafood platters, but pink shrimp are also an absolute must. Cooked, raw, organic, farmed, or wild, here we find all types for all tastes.
You got everything. Any of this organic?
Yes, organic shrimp. I have Madagascars.
Organic Madagascar? What size is that, 40-50?
30-40.
30-40? They're beautiful. A beautiful shrimp has antennas. You see, it's very firm. The color is homogeneous, and then it's pretty. It's got nice streaks. It's a beautiful shrimp. And of course, the smell is important too.
That's wild Madagascar.
I have a little trouble with the wild ones.
Oh, me too. The taste is stronger. It's not been through any fasting. It has a vein that is filled.
Let's see the vein.
The vein can cause bitterness, and it also hurts the aging process. It's relatively expensive, but it's a beautiful shrimp with a fine form. After, we have the farm shrimp. This shrimp is from intensive farming rather than semi-intensive, so it's my least expensive one. It's still a good shrimp, but it's different in terms of fleshiness and flavor.
Of the 6 million tons of shrimp produced worldwide, 4 million come from shrimp farming. Madagascar, Ecuador, Nigeria, Indonesia, they're farmed all over the globe, but they all share a common element. They contain sulfites. Labeled E223, sodium metabisulfite is present in more or less significant doses in all shrimp, even the organic brands. It's used to maintain their color and prevent black stains appearing on the shell, called melanosis.
These shrimps contain sulfites?
Yes, of course, it's a preservative. So the legislation states the professional must display it. It's an allergen. So you see, right here, sulfites, preservatives.
According to a 1991 IFREMER report, metabisulfite replaced boric acid, which is too dangerous for health. Yet in the same report, the preservative is identified as the cause of important health problems for fishermen. Burning sensations, suffocating vapors, they can even damage a boat's bilge pump when they're sprayed on the shrimp. Sulfites are present in much of our food, and in principle, they aren't a danger to health, except for the 200,000 French who have an intolerance to them. Another product that holds a very special place on the seafood platter are shellfish, because they are consumed raw and are very difficult to conserve.
The shellfish are fragile. A little bit of warmth and they die. And the smell tells you right away if it's okay or not.
Can we harvest them ourselves?
You can harvest everything on your own, but then you take the risk of food poisoning.
And more than 2 million French take that risk, often without knowing it. Recreational fishing has become popular on the coast, especially during high tide, which takes place twice a month when the sun and the moon are aligned with the earth. In the Bay of Saint Malo, the tidal range, the difference between high tide and low tide levels exceeds 40 feet. These are the largest tides in Europe. Here the water recedes for miles, which is the case today. The coefficient is greater than 100. Julien, an environmental engineer at IFREMER, is in charge of monitoring the coastal areas at the Dinar station. He reminds us of some important instructions to keep in mind.
Recreational fishing is accessible to everyone. The problem is to know where to fish, how to fish, and what to fish. You have to be a microbiologist, a chemist, a lawyer, and a journalist.
All at once.
Yes, to know which shell to pick, which size, how much, with which tool. Is the ground healthy enough for fishing? And you must know where to find all this information. Often people are aware of the obvious risks, such as physical risks. You can sink in. We know the water will start to rise, so people must be aware. It's quite intuitive. It's more complicated for the health aspects. People may not be aware that the shellfish they consume can have a health risk.
Because shellfish are living filters of the water in which they live. 5 liters per hour for mussels or oysters, and they preserve any toxic substance in their meat.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I see you're fishing, and it looks pretty good.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Did you inquire about the health risks of the shellfish?
No, not at all.
Not at all. You never do?
No.
Do you know that shells can be contaminated?
Yes.
Here, for example, you're on a good site.
Okay.
That's the good news. You can eat your catch.
Okay, thank you.
But even if you're on a site that is generally good, temporary alerts can still occur. Because even if a site is good, there can be an accident on the coast or at sea, which temporarily makes your shell not good to eat.
Ephemer monitors the professional sites, like here where oysters and mussels are raised. The ARS, the Regional Health Agency, controls recreational fishing sites that are very active and can pose a health hazard. Collecting shellfish is not a trivial activity and can involve risks.
When we have a report of several people becoming sick after eating shellfish caught in the same place, this is called a group food intoxication. In these cases, we may look for other bacteria, gastroenteritis viruses, or hepatic viruses in the context of our epidemiological investigation to look for the origin of the problem. That's already happened to people who have collected mollusks? Yes, there have been some fairly large epidemics in Brittany, where we looked for the hepatitis virus due to a group of people who became sick after eating shellfish that they collected on fishing or farming ground.
The two organizations use the same laboratory and the same protocols. Once a month, technicians take samples from mussels, clams, or oysters at 30 referenced sites. They always look for the same bacteria, Escherichia coli, a tracer of fecal contamination. E. coli is rarely pathogenic, but this bacteria is always accompanied by other bacteria that definitely are. A significant E. coli contamination in shellfish indicates the risk of the presence of bacteria in the water, and this is a big health hazard.
Water brings life and allows our shells to live there, but water can also bring the contaminations that will affect our shellfish. We see a water outlet in the middle of this beach, and even if we're not sure it's associated with a risk, the potential exists, so we will avoid fishing directly in the outlet.
What is an outlet?
An outlet is usually a pipe with a continuous water flow. We do not know if it's rainwater or if it's a bad connection to wastewater.
It's surprising in a city like this to see sewer drainage on the beach.
It's not a sewer drain, it's a pipe that's historically associated with a sewer. But today, normally, it's a reliable water source.
So we understand that the risk of contamination to shellfish comes from both the earth, but also from the sea, via the growth of microscopic algae that secrete toxins that accumulate in seafood and can pose a significant health risk for consumers.
The most famous of these toxins are diarrheic phycotoxins that can give us dysenteric syndrome, like a food poisoning with diarrhea and dehydration.
It's serious?
Yes, it can be serious. You are often hospitalized for profuse diarrhea and major dehydration. You must be hospitalized in these cases. Then you have a second toxin that is an amnestic phycotoxin that will rather affect the upper neurological center, the brain, with symptoms that can range from convulsions to possibly a coma. And of course, again, you will need hospitalization. And then the third phycotoxin that will affect the peripheral neurological centers with sensory disturbances, sensory paralysis, sensory motor paralysis that can lead to respiratory paralysis, and even death. The important thing to remember is that for these toxins, it's the dose that makes it so poisonous. The more you ingest, a larger dose of poison, the more the symptoms will be important.
We return to Arcachon. It's a few days before the end of the year, and the queen of the platter is the spiny lobster. For Stéphane, his Christmas present has already arrived.
My concern was, are they still alive? And for now, they're all good. I'm reassured they're alive. Oh, this one's fine.
Are you happy with these?
This is a beautiful one. 4.5 to 5.5 pounds. I was worried. I didn't sleep last night because of this. I was afraid they'd arrive dead. Or they wouldn't arrive. They're almost all sold already.
5.5 pounds?
Yep, 5.5 pounds. Some customers ask us for lobsters, no matter the weight, up to 3 to 5 pounds. No problem with the weight or the price.
And how much per kilo?
We're at 120, 130 euros per kilo.
And they go on the seafood platter?
Yes, a lot go on platters. Here we have pink spiny lobsters. We bought them for our seafood platters, but we make trays with these too. We check them over to see that they're pretty and very full. The caliber on these, it's 14 to 20 ounces, 17 ounces on average. We'll cut them. It'll be a half per person. We brought in about 900 to 1,100 pounds of lobsters like this, and the guy had a ton. So we alone took in 1,000 pounds.
And you also buy the Caribbean?
No, not at all. We don't touch those.
Neither Caribbean or Australian?
No, that's not our quality. We don't like them much. We cook them, we put them in our pots, so we like to know what we put in. We know where they come from. We're sure of the quality. All year long, we do that. If there are no spiny lobsters, we don't offer spiny lobster.
Stéphane insists on the quality of his products and their origins. He buys live spiny lobsters because once cooked or frozen, they all look alike, and it becomes difficult to know what you're getting. We took our hidden camera into several stores, and everywhere the observation is the same. The Caribbean appellation is a generic term referring to hot water spiny lobsters, of which Panulirus argus is the most common. Where do they come from exactly? The Caribbean? They come from the West Indies, is that right? I don't really know if it's marked here exactly. Bahama, Caribbean, Atlantic, Center, West. Actually, Panulirus argus is caught in the Center West Atlantic in area FAO 31, according to the United Nations. It's a huge fishing site, 10 times the size of France. But how many of us are aware that this spiny lobster is no longer edible in some parts of the Caribbean? They even pose a danger to health. We cross the Atlantic Ocean to meet Maxime in Martinique. He is a native Martiniquais. At 35 years old, he has just converted to deep-sea fishing.
Je pêche plus de langouste. Voilà. C'est pollué.
I don't fish lobster anymore. They're polluted. There was a pollution with capone, or DDT. So we were asked not to fish near the coast.
Capone, an ultra-toxic pesticide that has been used for over 20 years on Guadeloupe and Martinique's banana plantations to fight against the weevil, the banana's main enemy. The World Health Organization classified capone as a carcinogen in 1979. It is an endocrine disruptor, and it's recognized as neurotoxic. Capone has entered the food chain, depositing its poison in the soil, the rivers, and along parts of the coast. Maxime takes us to his former fishing grounds, where he hunted spiny lobsters before learning that they were contaminated.
Alors tu vois, cette baie-là, elle a vraiment pas de chance.
So you see this bay? It's unfortunate. It's polluted with capone, and you can't fish here. All this is Fort-de-France, the Bay of Fort-de-France. It's polluted.
On est ici. On est là.
We're at François. We're here. We're right here exactly. And from the tip of the Caravelle to the François, and even going along the barrier reef, we can't fish. And you have all the North Atlantic face that's polluted too.
Atlantique, qui est quand même pollué aussi.
Polluted with capone?
Yes, it's forbidden to fish here because of capone.
On a la brésilienne.
We have a Brazilian here that's already an adult. It's about the right size. And we have a royal here that's bigger, but we can't keep this one because it's too small.
Elle est trop petite. Voilà.
They're contaminated with capone?
Bah oui, les deux.
Yes, both with capone.
Brésilienne,
Of course, the Brazilian accumulates more pollution,
mais les deux sont pollués.
but still both are contaminated with capone.
Bah, du coup, même moi, pour les consommer,
Even for my own consumption, personally, I don't eat them. It scares me.
They're that bad?
ouais, non. C'est pas...
Yes,
Voilà, moi, j'ai grandi ici, j'en ai mangé.
I grew up here.
Alors que c'était déjà pollué.
I ate them when it was already polluted.
Pendant 20 ans.
I ate them for 20 years.
Au moins,
And I ate at least 10 lobsters like this per week.
dans la semaine, quoi. Par semaine.
So,
J'ai une sacrée...
I think you could say I have a big dose of capone.
And you don't want your children to do the same.
Ah non, mais mes enfants... si mes enfants...
If my kids want to eat lobsters,
faudra aller prendre plus...
we'll have to go fishing further away, but not here.
Là, ceux-là, c'est...
These here are gone for many years, and even my grandchildren will not be able to eat them.
On va pas en manger, quoi.
At the Martinique Ephemer station, where the report on capone was written, we are not welcomed. No images or interviews are allowed. The subject is too touchy.
No camera. I told you no camera here. No interview, no film, no camera. We don't do interviews. And on a subject like this one, the communication is controlled, shall we say.
I read the Ephemer report on capone. It was done here. So that's why I came to see what the situation is now, not to create controversy, just to know more.
It's not controversial, but it's very touchy, because capone is a product that has been used by producers on bananas for years because there are exemptions that should never have been given. So there it is.
The chief of Martinique fishermen is not afraid of our camera, and he doesn't mince words.
No one cares about us fishermen. The state doesn't care about fishermen. No one cares about us fishermen. Knowing that one guy sprays his bananas and another guy dies 20, 30 years later is criminal. Can you imagine we're the world champions of prostate cancer? We die of the prostate. It kills us. People who are doing intensive farming will kill us all.
Today, more than 90% of Guadeloupe and Martinique's inhabitants are contaminated by the toxic molecule, with terrifying health consequences. These islands have the highest prostate cancer rate in the world. Generations of West Indians will have to live and die with this chemical monster that has infected the soil and the sea for the next 700 years. This catastrophe is unique on the planet. The one consolation is for the local spiny lobsters that are now able to reproduce in peace in the capone-polluted waters. A few days before Christmas, seafood platters are appearing everywhere. At the Carrefour supermarket of Granville, they have a particularly special flavor because here they feature a local product, Whelk.
They come from a sustainable fishery. The Granville Bay fishery that got the MSC label is an artisanal fishery which is subject to daily quotas. It has this green color from the bay. We find its foot, its operculum, and we see the mucus that is still present inside the shell, which gives it flexibility and tenderness.
Whelk from the Granville Bay are certified with the MSC Eco label, guaranteeing they're from sustainable fishing, and they'll soon join the very closed circle of seafood, having obtained the European IGP label. It's not surprising that the French Carrefour food chain is using French Granville whelk instead of Irish whelk that are much bigger but less flavorful. In the past, the sea snail was the unloved member of the seafood platter, the odd shell that reminds you of a snail and looks complicated to shell. It replaced the warty Venus clam that became too expensive and too rare. Seafood lovers' tastes have changed, and now whelk have become trendy. At 6 o'clock in the morning, it's the last moments of the night on the bay of Granville. 5 mornings out of 7, Guillaume sails 12 hours southwest of the Chausey Islands in search of whelk. Less flamboyant than its neighbor, the lobster, the whelk is not less refined, and they have big appetites.
To make a good whelk in Granville Bay, you need good food. They used to say whelks eat anything, but you still need fresh bait.
Right.
We use green crab, live green crab. We salt it the day before and cut some dogfish and put a bit of dogfish in the bin. Sometimes when areas get harder to fish, we put in a second bait like spiderfish or a crab. We can use about 250 pounds of green crab a day and 220 pounds of dogfish.
Isn't that expensive?
It depends. We fish some of it ourselves, otherwise they cost €1.10, €1.20. It's expensive.
On the whelk ship, the choreography is perfectly synchronized between Guillaume and his 2 sailors. Their rhythm is constant. More than 700 times a day, they raise the buckets. The basket is fixed to a concrete plate that serves as a ballast. They weigh 66 pounds on average. When the bucket is brought up, you turn it, and when it's put back in the water, you spin it. This is the language of the fishermen.
We have the right to fish 2,000 pounds a day. We do that pretty much all the time, but it is a little irregular. Now our baskets should be full. You know, fishing is sometimes cyclical. One year is good, and the next isn't. One year, they may not lay much, and you lose a generation. On the other hand, this is super quality. Nothing's better than this quality. They are clean, beautiful.
The sorter, like a one-armed bandit, is pouring out fleshy whelk. The little ones are thrown back into the sea, back to their life, as the fishermen say. The boat continues to circulate from zone to zone and always navigates carefully.
We're going to move about a half a mile. The first spot was here, and to the west was a little better. So we'll give it a shot, and then we'll see if it's the same tomorrow.
Observing the captain as he scrutinizes the seabed of the English Channel, we see that whelk harvesting is highly technical. Although it is sedentary, the whelk moves with the current and lives in colder waters. But whelk are also beginning to feel the effects of climate change, and their numbers here are decreasing.
Pierrette, are you there?
Hello, Lion.
Any luck? Is it getting better?
Very average. I think it's disappointing.
That's the way it goes. This bugs me. And when conditions aren't right, it's worse than anything.
I see there's plenty of sand.
Yeah, there's a lot of sand.
Despite this, Guillaume will once again make his daily quota, 2,000 pounds of shellfish, that he will sell at 2 to 3.5 euros per pound at the Granville fish auction. Back in Arcachon, it's Christmas Eve. The prices on the menu have exploded, and yet the orders continue to flow in.
10 minutes?
I'll take care of it.
Okay, 10 minutes, that should do it.
Refrigerator trucks arrived early this morning to store the seafood platters prepared at the end of the night. Stéphane is everywhere at once, but mainly he mans the boiling stations because cooking the langoustine is his post.
It's the last langoustines for cooking. Put them in the trays. Be careful. We'll cook the spiny lobsters. These arrived kind of weak. We bought them at Les Sables d'Olonne, so we have to cook them this morning. Either I taste them, or they end up on the special trays. I'll put them in right away, and after that, we'll cook the lobsters for the customers who asked for them. Let's go. How many do you want? 4? 5, 10? Let's cook the lobsters. Will you bring me lobsters? We'll cook about a dozen. No, around 20. Bring me 20. The langoustines are for me. I'm the langoustine cook. I have my method. Apparently the customers like it. They're not too cooked, just enough, just between the two. It's not necessary that the langoustines... What has to happen is they have to come apart by themselves. Good in the morning, too. Not bad, huh?
During the end-of-year celebrations, the number of fishmongers in Stéphane's fish shop rises to over 20. A headache for this business owner who has had trouble finding qualified people. Filleting a sea bass or mounting a seafood platter is not something you can improvise. Professional schools are finding it hard to attract young people into the profession. At the Lorient Fishmonger Training School, the competition for Best Apprentice Fishmonger in France has begun. Bruno prepared the tests. Creating a seafood platter is the most daunting test.
It's a seafood platter for 2 people. You have to imagine it's a bit of a tete-a-tete. You're noted on the opening and on the dressage, the appearance of the products also, with a penalty for shell pieces, of course, if you leave them in the oysters. The platter must be transportable, so be careful with the compositions that are a little wobbly. You have 45 minutes, so I'll let the jury start.
Check your products.
Yes, check your products. Generally, when you make your platter, you make your base. After that, you already have an idea of how you will organize your products. Usually you start with your oysters, place them, and then you can put your crab, your shrimps, your langoustines. Avoid touching the oysters. Avoid shells in them. Avoid killing the oysters. The mollusk must remain whole, alive. And there's the gesture, too. The security of the gesture. If a candidate puts himself in danger, we will stop him. The crab can be done very simply. You cut it in 2, take out the sand pouch, and it's ready. If you want to be a little more technical, you clear away the shell, open it, clear the gills. It must be well cooked or everything gets stuck inside. But then again, they're here to become best apprentice of France.
How much time is left?
8 minutes. You won't drop the platter? You check that it's well balanced? It's over. Candidates, you're finished. These are young people who have only been in the business for a very short time, but we already see a super level. It's really nice to see.
In a few days, a delegation of parliamentarians will receive the top French apprentices with great pomp at the Sorbonne. This helps to promote these artisanal sectors and the talented young graduates. The future of shellfish still looks bright. Consumed since antiquity, these delicacies of the sea are adored by the French and remain a favorite the world over.